Um, I've had a lot of questions lately. But something that I was thinking about today, I'm not going to articulate this very well, but I guess practically speaking, um, how or what is, how can a person change, or like, is it possible to see a difference in a person when once they become different? Or, I mean, do people ever really change, I guess?
Do people ever change?
Yeah. Yeah. And if they do, is it possible to actually observe that? Or maybe does it happen over such a long time that it's impossible to even really, it's imperceptible? Like you talk about objectivity, um, sometimes, and so that's kind of been the measure of change for me, the way that I understand it, the sort of space between an experience and a, I guess, reaction, for lack of a better term. And so, maybe is objectivity the same thing as change?
Emily, the past few weeks I've been interested in going to YouTube and looking at some of, the new age teachers and what they say and how they say, and the sort of questions that people ask. And at times I'm puzzled why they're on the stage, and I'm puzzled why the audience just doesn't storm out because it's so filled with nonsense. Um, sometimes I kind of get worried that, you know, that some of my own ideas and some of the ways I respond to questions, you know, are in the same fashion, kind of cheap and hollow and fluff. Uh, when I was in Iran and I was very young, maybe 6 or 7 or 8, my parents were sending both my brother and I to um, an Indian doctor to learn English. My brother just had a talent. Even now, when you speak to him in English as well as in Persian, he's very articulate. His vocabulary is very expansive. And I remember maybe 7 or 8. I wanted to be like him. I felt so incompetent whenever he was around and when he spoke. Even though we were so young. So the only way I realized I could compete with him was to buy a dictionary and begin learning or memorizing the words. So I started from page 1A, and I think I only made it halfway through. It was like a 4-volume dictionary, Persian to English. And that kind of jealousy stayed with me for a long, long time because, even though I was the oldest kid in the family, he graduated much earlier than I. He started, making money. He was working for a private IT company, and he no longer worked at the car wash. And I felt deficient in many, 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 many ways. So when you ask about change, in some ways I was comparing myself to my brother, and I didn't like who I was. And rightly so, there wasn't really much to like. No one should enjoy being around a 10-year-old. They really have nothing to offer except headaches. But the change wasn't intuitive. It wasn't like I had reached the stage in life where, because of biology and psychological evolution, I had come to a place where I began to ask myself, for some strange reason, I am forced by my own interior to kind of look at my life and find it insufficient. That wasn't the case. I was looking at someone from the outside, and they just made me feel bad for who I was and what I was and all of that. And it was, in some ways it's unhealthy, but in other ways it was very healthy, because, instead of wasting time perhaps playing soccer outside, I would sit home and go through the dictionary in hopes that next time we speak English, I can use a few words that he wouldn't know. But when you speak about change, I guess I'm bringing up this example because there is this desire to change due to comparing yourself to the people on the outside. You deem them worthy, you deem them valuable. You feel as if they have something that you don't. And it may be true that they may have something that you don't. And you want to be like them. That's, it's much better than, I think it's much better when you're, if you have a choice of becoming like Snoop Dogg and Mahatma Gandhi, I think the better choice would be becoming like Mahatma Gandhi. So that change that's inspired from the outside is actually quite good. The question that you're asking is something I was talking to the class this morning. For the longest time in our history, there was really no real need for people to change. First, there were really no real opportunities out there in the world. We lived in villages. You couldn't travel, you couldn't see very many people, especially those who were very different from you. No one really could read. Everybody went to church on a Saturday and Sunday, and nobody really examined their religion, nobody examined their belief system, nobody examined in a very serious way, the politics of the day. People just knew that life was hard, and they tried to survive the best that they could. Today, options are, out there for all of us. And, you don't like Jordan Peterson, you go to Moji. You don't like Moji, you go to Sadhguru. You don't like Sadhguru, you go to Ramana Maharshi. There are an infinite, number of options out there. And I think they have a tendency of inspiring change, also making you feel bad. There are some, I think, real reasons for all of us to feel bad about ourselves and, where we are in life. And that can inspire change. I'm really not quite sure, though, what inspires people to want to change, if not from the outside? And I don't know if we can ever tell. I haven't lived in a desert for like 50 years to all of a sudden come to say to myself that I want a different kind of food, whether physical or emotional or spiritual. All I know is that I am a creature of society, and there are lots of things out there, lots of people out there, uh, who have accomplished a great deal, and that creates a good amount of jealousy inside me. Jealousy leads to competition. There is this internal battle inside me where I want to change from, perhaps uh, from sloth to someone who's a bit more active. Emily, after many years of eating chocolate and sweets of sorts, coming from a culture where we don't really know what flossing is, we don't really know what brushing is, brushing your teeth. We don't really know, at least in my time, I didn't know what toothpaste was. There comes a point that in your adult life you begin to suffer from toothaches. And it's just you not knowing, anything about cavities, not knowing about the impact of sugar, on your teeth. And this is a pain that comes to you very instinctually. It's like a fact of life that if you don't take care of your body, something awful will happen to you. When it comes to these other things, such as intellectual growth or intellectual change or emotional change or spiritual change, I'm not quite sure where the pain comes from. I don't really know why I need to listen to Jordan Peterson so that he could make me feel bad or incompetent about myself, so I could begin to feel okay. My parents have been married for 60 years. They've never gone to a relationship workshop. They never really asked questions about love. They've been doing fine. And I have no doubt that, if they went to a workshop about relationships, in a few months they would end up divorcing each other. Because now they're going to be given information about who they are, what they are, their culture, their heritage, and they're going to kind of begin to doubt and second guess themselves. The toothache doesn't need anyone from the outside. No one needs to tell me that I have a cavity and I'm in pain. It just happens to me naturally and organically, and I'm moved to action. But when someone comes to you and says you don't really know how to think and how to feel about things the right way, I don't really know. I don't know if Socrates had the right to go around the country telling people that they're wrong in the way they're living their life. I'm not sure if Jesus was right in going around telling people that, they should seek the kingdom of God. The only thing he's really done was create an offshoot in Judaism. And he made a cult that eventually grew to be one of the biggest traditions. And now you have Christians against Jews, you have Jews against Christians, you have Christians against Muslims, and Muslims against Christians. I don't even know if the change really, that particular way of inspiration was necessary. People were simply fine going to the synagogue, reading the Talmud, eating bread together, talking together, having arranged marriages. Nobody really cared for the spirit of the law. There was no such a thing. And if there was, it was hidden. It was in underground movements, in cults. But this idea of change, I don't know if Ginning told you, but she went to a talk by Jordan Peterson last night in Richmond, and the biggest stadium that they have, it seats about 20 people. So you have a 60-some-year-old man who's a clinical psychologist, who was also an instructor in the classroom. He's been dealing with, people in bad relationships, addictions, and is invited, and he comes on the stage and he talks to people, and everybody desires to change. I mean, it's part of who and what we are, it's part of our evolution. You can't still sit still, it's just not possible. The problem that I'm having is that everybody wants to change, but we don't really know what the price or the cost is for this desire. It's like if you want to buy a house, as Cassie is, what you have to do, Emily. You have to start saving money, which means you can't go out as much. You can't buy clothes as much. You can't buy shoes as much. You really just have to kind of tighten your belt and save. And how much can you really save when you work at In-N-Out or Home Depot? Or maybe when you make $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year? Because to put a down payment for a house, you need about $200,000, especially these days. And then you need to have a steady job. I mean, sure, you hate your studio, and you want to change where you live from a studio to maybe a 2-bedroom, but the price is tripled. All is that you just want to move, you want change, but you never consider the kind of price you have to pay for that change. You keep reading books about change, but the sacrifices that you have to make for this change to actually come to something that's real, tangible, I'm not sure if any of us, are capable of the sacrifices that are required. Because if you want to change, especially if your pursuit is something valuable and meaningful, and those terms are quite vague in themselves, all is that in a very ambiguous way you want to change. You have no idea what the costs are. You have no idea the sort of pains that are going to be created inside you. And I think you and I live in a culture that no one really talks about the pain that is involved. I mean, look, you and I fall in love, Emily. I mean, all of us in this room have fallen in love. It's great, you write poetry, you stay up and you wait for a text or a phone call or something. But after 2 weeks, managing the relationship, keeping the love alive, it's quite painful. And then you realize that the two of you who come from different backgrounds, and then the compromise is even more painful. And then there is going to be misunderstanding, and that's going to be even more painful. And it's not like we are professionals where we sit and we have dialogues about misunderstandings. We actually fight. Someone sleeps on the sofa. You break up. No one speaks about all these complexities of love. Everybody just talks about the fluff. You go on YouTube and, Moji on the title of his video, for example, says, "Love is all you need." Well, it's something so impractical and so novice and so infantile to kind of just state. It's not easy for someone to hear that there are certain deficiencies inside them. Regardless of who you are, even if you're a homeless person, a beggar out in the streets, you have self-respect, you have pride. You don't want anyone to tell you how awful your life is, how awful you are. Now, none of us in this room are homeless. All of us in this room, we have 2, 3, 4, 5 different degrees. All of us teach in a classroom. And now someone comes and tells you, and keep in mind that as instructors, you walk into the classroom and you have 40, 50 students who look at you. Some of them look up to you. And rightly or wrongly, they assume that you have actually things to offer them. I mean, none of us really do, but what the hell do students know? And so you get all this attention, you get all this respect. They email you asking, well, what do I need to do to write better essays, to think better? What do I need to do in my relationship? And so as you walk out the classroom, you run into a Socrates and he tells you how ridiculous and infantile you are. Well, how are you going to take that after having been given attention for an hour and a half or 3 hours? So the first thing is that it's really difficult to be told that there are things inside you that need changing. And then, you're going to kind of look the other way. You're going to deny that those things actually exist inside you. It's kind of like we tell our parents, you take a guy home and your mom looks at him and says, honey, this guy is not right for you. And you look at your mom who's like 70, you say, Mom, I don't know if you've ever been in love. And if you have, you certainly have forgotten. And I see how you are now. Your relationship really does not revolve around love. Now, I truly love Johnny. It's something you don't really understand. And your mom, what can the poor woman do? After 5-6 hours, she kind of gets frustrated, throws her hands up and says, all right, don't come to me telling me I didn't warn you so. So first you hear it, and then you deny it. But, it's kind of like the Garden of Eden story. Your mom plants a seed that, honey, there is something wrong. Or Socrates plants a seed that the unexamined life is not worth living. Or Heidegger plants a seed that you should live your life in a very authentic way. Or Henry David Thoreau comes to you and says, suck the marrow out of life. And people, use these bumper stickers as like gospels, that this is how I want to be and this is how I want to live. There comes a point where after these seeds have been nourished and they blossom inside you, you actually want to change. And you make plans. But these plans go against 20, 30 years of addictions you have to certain ways of thinking and feeling and being. And the result is painful conflicts. Because there are certain desires inside you that just need to be annihilated, to be destroyed. Otherwise, change will never happen. And I don't really know if, anyone can endure the trauma of change. Because, in many ways it's too much. And it doesn't take, very much to look at human history and realize that despite everyone's desire to change, there are really just so few people who are able to change. Consider that story that we have been given by Friedrich Nietzsche. And I'm going to take some liberty with the story because it's incomplete the way he says it. And forgive me, I'll just make it my own. So all of us, kind of are born like a lamb. We are unspotted, we are clean, we are innocent. There is really no need to change. It's like the kids tonight. They were all over the place. They were jumping, they were having fun, they were breaking things, they were beating up people. And that's what they do. I mean, this is what kids do. They have wings. They don't really know what boundaries are. They haven't yet been domesticated by the ridiculous adults around them who are consumed by fear, obligations, responsibilities about things that they really hate, but you can't just walk away from the responsibilities. Your life will just crumble. And you may be okay at the age of 20 to kind of pack a few things and get on a train and go wherever the train goes, but at the age of 40, 50, 60, it's suicide, really. Now, you're born as a lamb, you're innocent, you're pure, and little by little something really strange happens to you without you knowing. Well, let me skip not too many steps, just a few. Even as innocent as you may be, your mom makes pancakes for you and they're delicious and you love them. You ask for pancakes the next day and they don't taste the same, and you throw a ruckus, you throw a fit, and you scream and you cry. And even your taste buds kind of remove the freedom of experience from you. Your taste buds. Because from the age 2 or 3, there is something amazing and traumatic about us, really, which is you begin to memorialize your experiences, good or bad, and then anything that comes after, you begin to compare. And that's just the way we've been wired. And so what happens, as a 1 or a 2 or a 3-year-old, as they kind of slowly begin to walk into society, society and their parents begin to change them. They become responsible for things they're not yet ready. I mean, tonight we had to raise our voice at the kids. If you have been kind of soft-spoken to them and with them for the past 20 hours, and all of a sudden you're screaming at them, it's like a hurricane. They have no idea what to do with it. And eventually fear is going to overcome them. And they're going to become domesticated, but not in the right way, But I think as parents, you're kind of just paralyzed and you don't have the proper tools, and your only really arsenal is to scream at the top of your lung, and this kid that just kind of gets frozen in space and time. And then you send them to school, and there are the instructors there, and then there comes a point, especially in this culture, where you send your kids to work at a very young age because you think they need to be responsible at the age of 5. So they begin to work at In-N-Out, they begin to know a few things about money, and it's like 17 or 18 years of age where their sexual episodes are blossoming, and there is some trauma there, and then there is bullying, and then there is more schooling, and then there is a job, and then there is looking for a place to live, what sort of friends you want to have in your life, what sort of things you categorize as fun and pleasurable. And you come to realize by the time you're 30, you're carrying this huge, suitcase on your back, and it's heavy. You're carrying the traumas of childhood, you're carrying responsibilities given to you by your parents. Society has burdened you in 1,001 different ways. Your own biology is kind of weighing heavily on your shoulders. And you're no longer the lamb that you used to be. You have now become a camel living in the desert. Society has nothing to offer you. Relationships, really for the most part, are quite hollow and meaningless. They have nothing to offer you. But what the hell are you going to do? Are you going to lock yourself up in a room and what, just read books? Your biology is going to come, looking for you. You need companionship. You need to go out. You need to touch some human being. You need to look at some human beings, out there. You need to speak to someone. And, these are heavy things to carry as a human being. And camels belong to the desert. They live in the desert. There is nothing nourishing in the desert, It's it's kind of like the third painting of Thomas Cole, where this guy is on the boat, and the water is no longer friendly, and the sky no longer has any light. It's cloudy, it's dark, it's bleak, and his knees are bent. His face is unshaven. He just looks bad. He looks broken. He needs help. And that's how all of us are in society.